if you're anything like me, cost of specific items, whenever you first get interested in them, you get a little daunted. Now for me, whenever I first got into knives, I wanted the likes of Spyderco, Cold Steel, Benchmade, and other brands of that nature. But cost was always on my mind, and I couldn't bring myself to spend £60+ on a knife. But back then I was looking around looking for alternatives. Now, Spyderco are very kind in that they offer is the tenacious and the ambitious, resilience. All those others were nice. But I didn't want that form factor of a knife. I wanted to stick along the same sort of lines as the Delica, the Endura, that type of knife. In doing so, I came across this. Byrd. It's another company. It's a smaller company underneath Spyderco. Still within the same family. I'll get rid of that. Now, I knew that a Delica was always something I wanted, but for similar costs you can get an Endura, but I wasn't very sure if I'd want an Endura because of just the way it's laid out. I don't know if I'd prefer one over other knives that are out there. So I wanted to have a bit of a test bed, and in doing so, that's whenever Byrd stepped in. The Byrd Cara Cara 2 in the G10. Now, this knife, originally, the original Cara Cara had a big hump and it came down, and it wasn't very appealing at all. I didn't like it. I didn't find it to be a very aesthetically pleasing knife. But that's just my opinion. Each to their own. We all buy knives mostly based on how they look to us and whether or not we actually like their aesthetics. But this one, the revamp, the second one, I did like. It comes in two options, either their G10, which I went for, or the FRN, which is along the same sort of design as Spyderco's. I chose the G10 because I thought that the G10 would add more traction to the knife over the FRN. But keep in mind, this is before I had the likes of the Delica. Going straight into the role that this knife will fill if you choose to carry it. As always, know your own laws. I'm not going to go into that, but know your own laws for your local areas. Okay, but the role that this knife, that I personally can see it fitting into, is as a large EDC knife. In my opinion, it's nicer to have a smaller knife like the Delica, or what's on my now? The Buck Vantage Select. I like the smaller knives for EDC. But this could go into a large EDC. Now if you look at the late Boy Scout, on his channel he put up a video about EDC and EDC Plus. Now I'll not get into that, but that's very foundational, you could say, to my thought pattern. So check that out, I'll put it down in the description. But this could be at large EDC, as in it'll feel really good in hand, not so great in pocket. Unlike this sort of size, it'll be better in pocket. Also, another role it could fill would be, now I know it's a bit dirty, it's a bit of a dirty thought, it's a dirty word to most people, but a tactical blade. Now this could be used by anyone and everyone to defend themselves in a lethal confrontation. It could be used in that factor. I'm not saying that you have to carry a tactical blade, whether or not it's legally allowed. I'm not saying that. It's for you to decide. It's your life. Anyway, I could see it being used as a tactical blade very well. For me, I'm carrying a large Voyager. Now if you look size wise, it's fairly comparable, especially in blade length. Handle, it's a bit different, but I like a larger blade for that role. Personally, I don't mind that. Now, the thing that allows it to be a tactical blade, in my eyes, is the fact that you've got a 3 3/4 inch blade. Personally, I would prefer it to be 4 and over for a tactical blade, but because it also full X's into a large EDC knife, the 3 3/4 inch blade allows it to be a jack of all trades but master of none, if you get my idea, because in similar ways as to the Manix 2. It's got a smaller blade, which is good for EDC. I think this is a better EDC knife than this, but it, again, jack of all trades, master of none. This knife gives us a 3 1/4 inch cutting edge, and yes, we're losing a 1/2 inch. They could take it right here to the handle, but I'm glad they didn't, because whenever you're using it just as an EDC knife, it's nice to have that forward troil, finger troil there, just to lock it in nice. Another reason that this could lend itself to an EDC knife is because of its weight. Now, weight can be questionable for some people, for others it's not so much. Like, I'm carrying, this is just under 5 ounces, plus the Buck Vantage today, and plus other things here and there. So weight could be an issue for some, maybe not. This weighs in, by my scale, at 4.4 ounces, which is alright for me. I feel it not to be overly heavy. Whenever you're carrying various assorted items, it hides away pretty well, I find. Moving on to the steel and blade shape. Now, the steel, it is Chinese made, so you can see down in there. And with it being Chinese made, we're going to get 8CR13 MOV. Now, I'm completely happy with 8CR13 MOV. I find it to be a very good steel for the money. It's not as good as the likes of the G10. It's just not, or the Benchmade 154 CM, or even, again, Spyderco, going back to it, CTS BD1. It's a Carpenter steel. It's a very nice steel, I find. But I feel it to be very much on par, and it's sort of analogous to Aussie. Well, this happens to be Aussie, eh? But it's along those sort of lines, and I find it to be very similar in performance to the 420 HC that Buck do. Blade shape is that sort of semi-traditional Spyderco design, that elongated drop point. I'm going to call it an elongated drop point, because it's stretched, it feels stretched out, but with that wee dip, it sort of, to me, lends itself to that sort of name. But I call it traditional for Spyderco because they've been doing it for years. It's, again, very similar to the likes of the Delica. But this Byrd design I find to be very good for EDC, for piercing, all that. And whenever you move on to use the thumb ramp and the finger troil, it's something that is in the design over the likes of the Endura. I find that this would compete against. Because it has that finger troil, it lends itself to more control, I find. Because you're able to get higher up in the blade, closer for that delicate work. I find it's easier for me, personally, and it gives that lock-in ability. Now, you do get a thumb ramp, thanks to the design of the knife. And with this finger troil, they've jimped it as well. Now the jimping, it's more of a function over aesthetic. It's not the nicest looking jimping in the world, but it's functional. If you look at Delica, there we go, it's more aesthetically pleasing. Now, taking this one step further, the Manix 2 It's jimpings and it's beautifully done, but also the sides are beveled, which just adds an extra level of class to the knife. In the hand, I find that there's plenty of room. I don't feel it to be uncomfortable in any way. I do have small hands, even with gloves, though I do find it to be a very comfortable knife. You both can choke up, you can come back in that sort of grip, or just gain a reverse grip if that is your thing. Now, in with the ergos, the handle material they've used on this one is the G10. Now, they do offer it in the FRN. I chose the G10 myself, but as it's Chinese made, it's not overly good quality G10, and it's not very highly textured. It's functional, but I honestly believe that you get better gripping from the FRN. The G10, it's again functional, not very well done though. I find it to be a bit lacking in grip, in use, but it's nice. It's a nice material. It's a nice change from the FRN type plastics. Now, this knife does come with steel liners, but Byrd were nice enough to machine them out for us. So they've done a very good milling job there, I find. Again, very reminiscent of the likes of the Endura and the Delica. Here, if you take a look real quick. So that means that the weight, they're able to get it down to that 4.4 ounces rather than it be over 5. Well, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know, it can mount up fairly easily. Now, this is a traditional lockback design. I wouldn't advise you to do it like that. You know, 2 hands, just be safe. Because it's a traditional lockback, and not the likes of the cold steel triad lock, you just be careful whenever you're using your knife heavier, more heavy duty than normal, because any forces through the blade will transfer straight to the lock bar and it will impair the lockup, or it can do. Now, lockup, no, side to side's perfect, back and forth, back to front's perfect as well. But through heavy use, I have noticed that this lock bar has sort of angled itself a bit more. So there's a little lip here. If you run your finger, if I run my finger across, I can feel it catch and snag. Just here. And then it's lower down here. This portion doesn't meet up just as nice. Now, another point, this will lead this is going to touch on quality as well. On the back lock portion, on this lock bar itself, they've put that wee David Bowie detent there, but they haven't done any machine work on it the way they would on the actual Spyderco knives. This is radiused on the side portions and there, on that portion of the knife. Now, I find that on the Byrd, it can be kind of sharp, and through extensive use, I find it to dig in, and you really feel the effects of it over time, which you don't really on this one. On the Spyderco, it's a bit smoother, it's just a bit softer to the touch. The pocket clip that they've gave us is that very, again, traditional Spyderco, but just not as strong. I find it to be a little more pliable than the likes of the Spyderco. Yes, they're not the strongest in the world, but I find them to be plenty strong for their role. This one is polished. I think it's very well polished. I think it's a nice appearance to it. But personally, I prefer it to be blackened because of the way things are here. People, regardless of if it's legally allowed to be carried or not, the likes of this Byrd turn, you want it to be concealed and hidden because people tend to freak out a little whenever they see a knife. Even the likes of a wee Victorinox, whenever they see the knife blade, they seem to veer away from it a little. Now, the pocket clip, it is 4-way repositionable, so tip up, tip down, left and right. So it's a very good ambidextrous knife because of there not being any thumb studs. It's that hole that Byrd has. It allows it to be a very good ambidextrous knife. Again, with it being a lock back, it doesn't ever favour one side or the other. So I find it to be a very well thought out knife, giving you lots of value for money. Especially, keep in mind it's G10 ambidextrous knife, and it's giving you a feature that comes to be expected now with a lot of Spyderco knives. It's essentially a Spyderco it's a Chinese made version of the Endura, and personally I like that because it gives me the Endura function at a much less price. Going back to the quality of it, I've touched on this as well, it's just not radiused just as nicely, and again with the jimping, functional, not aesthetically pleasing. It's not overly nice. It's not aesthetically finished very well, I find. But the function is there over the aesthetics. Yes, you will have more quality and a nicer finish to the full-blooded Spydercos. But again, you're not spending £30 on one of these Spydercos. This is double the price of one of these. It's what you're willing to spend is a big part of it. Now, there are some competitive options for this knife, the most obvious of which is the Endura itself. It offers very similar form factors. It offers very similar function. Yes, you don't get the forward troil, the 50-50 troil there on the Endura, but you do get improved steel, you get a better overall quality, I find. Another competitive option, staying within the Byrd Spyderco lineup, is the Manix 2. This one, again, is much more expensive. This is about the £75 mark. This is their lightweight. I can't remember the actual number on it. It's C101. That's for the Manix 2, and I can't remember the specifics. But this has got their FRCP handle, fiber reinforced copolymer, over the G10 or even the FRN. I find it to be very similar. It's very nice in hand, and that is it's a very well weighted competitor against the likes of the Byrd and the Endura. I find it to be nicer in hand, personally. I find the quality of the knife to be better, and also with the ball bearing lock that Spyderco do, I personally prefer it. But that's just my own opinion. Then moving on to staying within that realm of the large possible tactical blades, I'd throw in the Cold Steel Voyager. This is the large, does come in the 3-inch, which is the medium, and then the XL, which is the 5.5-inch blade, I believe. But you're getting a lot of knife for the money with a Spyderco, with a Byrd even, and with Cold Steel. Now, I don't have it here, but one that it could compete against, still within the price range of the Endura, would be the full-size Griptilian. Yes, I know this is a 5.56 mini Griptilian, but I'm just using it as a demonstration, but just to have something there that relates to it. I'm talking about the 551 full-size Griptilian. It'll offer similar things to the Endura, but again, at a much higher price. If you want to stay within that price range of this, of the Byrd Cara Cara, you can look at the likes of the Tenacious and the Resilience, I believe, is the larger one. They offer very good, very similar quality for very similar price. Now that's going to be a liner lock, not a back lock, but that's all personal preference and what you want in your knife and what you're willing to front up for it. Overall, I do really like this knife. I would point anyone in this knife's direction because it offers very good value for money. It's not overly expensive. I'll put in the description where you can get it, and hopefully you can pick one up if you're in the market for it. So be safe, God bless, and have fun. It's coming up to Christmas, so make great memories with your family and friends. Alright, all the best. Bye.